Good morning, Joyce. Good afternoon. You're on mute. I wasn't sure if you're trying to speak with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our 60-minute presentation on letter writing for principals, a pathway to improving teacher practice. My name is Joyce Barett-Walker. I am an Eli consultant, coach, and mentor. And what I do, because this is a condensed version of this workshop that we normally do, so I'm going to put my CSA email in the chat. So any questions you may have, I will get back with you because this is a condensed version of the workshop. I'm going to share my screen at this time and start the presentation. Okay. Here we are. As I said previously, it's letter writing for principals, a pathway to improving teacher practice. As you notice, there is a QR code that if you can scan that, please do. If not, please copy the tinyurl.com. This will give you a plethora of resources that's attached to this presentation. One of the most important resources, I must say, is from Office of Labor Relations, FAQs. This document will answer anything you have on letter writing. It includes letters and anything you need to know to assist you improving teacher practices. I'm just going to give you about a minute. You may also find tinyurl.com in okay. We're going to move forward. The first thing we have to ask is, why do we write letters? There are various reasons why we write letters. I like to start with a positive. Sometimes we would like to write letters to teachers who go above and beyond, and because they're so committed to the schools. We can write complimentary letters that have to do with when teachers come in during inclement weather, and give you extra support. Those are letters that you really would like to write that will go into the file. There are also other type of letters that you could write. Can you please, if you want to put in the chat, why do you write letters? Please put a comment into the chat. Okay, we have one comment. Barbara says document and support, disciplinary, correct, to memorialize certain things. Thank you. To communicate also. Anything else? To validate a practice, very good. Those are some of the reasons that we do. Also, I see one comment is make expectations clear. We talked about to celebrate, to praise. That's very important. So those are some of the reasons. I'm going to also please remind, I want to please fill out the attendance form. We have about 100 participants at this Zoom meeting, and we want to make sure that everyone receives their CPLE credit for this book. Okay, thank you. Here is our table of contents. And as you notice, those are some of the resources are attached to this presentation. You can look privacy acknowledgement for student witnesses, some requirements for letters to file, and do's and don'ts of letter writing. And like I said before, this is like such a powerful resource. Office of Labor Relations frequently asked questions, extremely valuable. Here is our agenda and the objective of this workshop this afternoon. First of all, the goal is to empower all of you to support and supervise staff, and to write letters of documentation legally sustained. The objectives are to identify the various types of letters, because there are so many types of letters. And those of you who have been doing this for a couple of years, you know the various types of letters, but we will review that because there are many new principals on board. We're going to compare and contrast file versus non-file letters. And we're going to just look at some of the Office of Labor Relations FAQs. Okay. I'm just making sure that no one has a question in the chat. Now, we always talk about progressive discipline. What I want to say, even before we get to this, is make sure as we're coming into a new school year, in September, it's extremely important that whatever you document and note in your faculty handbook, if you want to call it, your staff handbook, make sure you incorporate every single thing that's your expectation. You don't want it to be where a staff member violates some of the infraction that's in there. As a principal of 13 years, I made sure I incorporated what an A420 was, what an A421, misconduct, insubordination, unprofessional behavior. Sometimes we cannot assume that teachers understand what constitute these items. So revisit maybe your staff handbook, your faculty handbook, to make sure that it's crystal clear to your staff what the expectations are. And I know all of you have a big thing is attendance and lateness, being at your assignment at the particular time. So these are things, even before we get to progressive discipline, make sure your entire staff, because they have to sign a sheet that they've received, that staff handbook or faculty handbook, that they clearly understand all the expectations. Our progressive discipline, and I'm sure some of you have gone through this, is first we speak with the employee. If we see there's an infraction that they violated, we speak to them. We give them a verbal notice. If that infraction repeats itself, we write a non-file letter. This is also, it's a non-file, doesn't go into the file, but notice that they received this letter to address the issue that you are concerned with. If the behavior continues, then we write a file letter. But it's very important that you use the correct language and the right way to write a file letter. In our last workshop that was conducted earlier this morning, one of the principals shared that she writes a file letter, but it gets kicked back. I would always reach out to legal, and I would send them the letters that I wanted to present to a teacher to put in their file. And they would make adjustments, make comments, so that my letter would sustain itself and would go into the teacher file. So make sure you do that. In this presentation, we are going to show you, I am going to show you sample letters. Here we have file letters versus non-file letters. What are some similarities? What are some differences? And you can please put a few, will take like 3 minutes for you to put some comments in the chat that we can share with everyone. And this sometimes is very important, especially to new principals sometimes. Okay. Anything of importance? What is the difference between a non-file letter or a letter to file? And then we have some similarities. Okay. Okay, we have a comment, signature acknowledging receipt. That's what a file letter requires, a conference. Thank you. So I have Mary and Wanda commented. One goes in the file, and that would be the file letter. Thank you. The other one does not. That would be the non-file letter. File letters used at a hearing, it can be. And non-file, I see counseling memos. Reminders of policies, those things. And we have copies sent to legal. Okay, I'm gonna stop right there. So those are some of the things that you mentioned. A file letter is not for file. Conference is not required for a non-file letter. And the teacher does not have to sign. Now, for any letter that goes into the file, we have an outgrowth of an investigation. It's outgrowth of an investigation. And it must be something that's similar, it must be written within 90 days of the incident. Okay, that's for your file letter. That's 90 days exclusive of vacation. So we have to make sure it's clear of a non-file letter and a file letter. A non-file letter, or we call them counseling memorandum, they're to give staff members notice of your concern, of what infraction they have created. So you can always mention what you put in a non-file letter to a letter to file, because you have given them warning, and that is part of your progressive discipline. Okay, here is some additional information. You initiate the progressive discipline process that I just said. You advise employees of school policy and rules. That's your handbook. Document events which may be referred to at a later date. So you can use the information from your non-file letter into a file letter. You're memorializing a conference and personal letters. And these days we use a lot of emails. So sometimes you email a staff member about your concerns. All this is part of the progressive discipline. Discipline letters. Violation of DOE regulations, school policies, New York City and New York State laws. Those are disciplinary letters. Disciplinary letters of misconduct, unprofessional behavior, conduct, or insubordination. All of those letters are for file. And there are samples of all of those letters in the Office of Labor Relations FAQs. Anyone has any questions? I'm going to check the chat. Okay. Now, we also talked about, and I saw someone put in the chat, file letters that are complimentary. You appreciate, a thank you, summary of logs of assistance, and recommendations. And it's so nice sometimes when you have, many times, you have a core group of staff members who are always going the extra mile, who are always thinking of students and the school community. And it's very nice that they can receive a letter because that speaks volume to them. Okay, someone asked, can I give examples of insubordination? Insubordination is basically if you ask a teacher to do something and they refuse. That's being insubordinate, just as the definition is. So insubordination is you ask a teacher to do something and they do not comply. And if it's something that's not violating the UFT contract, then they really need to adhere to what you ask them to do. One of the things that I learned as a principal very early on within my first and second year was I knew the UFT contract better than I knew my CSA contract. because before you write a letter or anything, you want to check the UFT contract to ensure that you are not violating the staff members' rights. And that saves a lot of time and energy, because usually when you meet with UFT, you can be confident that you have not violated a teacher's rights. Excessive absence and or latenesses. This many times can be a big issue. Okay, before I move on, someone asked, where can we find the UFT contract? You can go into the DOE and you can actually go UFT contract and navigate and find the information. I'm going to be honest, it's not that easy now. Before there was that little book, but now it's online. Okay, and I will put my email address before we close out this workshop, so that if you have any other question, I will get back with you and answer them. Talking about excessive absence or lateness. In the letter, you must state specific dates, times, and or patterns. When we talk about patterns, we really talk about staff members who somehow take off Fridays and Mondays, and it creates a pattern. They take days before or after a holiday. That's a concern. Maybe if they do it one time, but we're looking for a pattern that needs to be addressed. And if we don't address it, sometimes those patterns will continue. Because when you avoid addressing certain issues, staff members sometimes feel that is not important. Infractions addressed may extend beyond 90 days. DOE and specific school policies should always be cited. And administrative monitoring. Don't forget, we're always talking about progressive discipline and your monitoring should be memorialized. Okay. Someone asked, you said letters to file must be 90 days from the incident excluding vacation. Is it 90 school work days or 90 calendar days? It's 90 school work days. Okay. Corporal punishment or verbal abuse. These are letters to file, but the allegation require specific DOE procedures. They must be followed. And even if something comes to you, the last bullet, do not investigate or write a letter until you have been directed to do so. I know within this past year when I have spoke to principals, the time frame from the time you log in or the incident and the time they get back to you may sometimes be a little prolonged, but you really are not supposed to investigate or write a letter until you have been directed to do so. Okay. Counseling memorandums, non-disciplinary memo to a teacher. They cannot be attached to any letter or file, used as documentation evidence only if teacher denies notice, and it cannot be used to rate a teacher's performance. In the Office of Labor Relations, as it says here, not recommended for use, you make the decision. If you're using a counseling memorandum, again, is giving the teachers notice, but it really doesn't hold the weight that it needs to. I believe when I used to do counseling memorandums, I would refer that they did receive this counseling memorandum if the incident repeats itself in a letter to file. Okay, guidelines to writing sustainable disciplinary letters. There is a procedure. There's a certain language you have to use. You include the date of the letter, date of the conference, names of attendees. You state the reason for the meeting, the teacher's response, quote, if possible, the supervisor's response. If it's disciplinary, that includes the impact on students, the recommendation and consequences, and conclusion. And as it says, the magic words, you know, sometimes at the end of the letter, it says, I have received a copy of this letter and understand that it will be placed in my official personal file. And then the signature, include a line for the date of the teacher and the signature. Those are your disciplinary letters. Any questions? Now, sometimes we have situations, in addition to corporal punishment, we have documentation to support incompetency. Those of you who have been in administration for a while know it is very difficult to do a 30-20 on trying to terminate a tenured teacher. But under the law, 30-20A, incompetency is demonstrated when an employee is unable to provide a valid educational experience for his or her students. You can document if you go into the classroom and you see that instruction is not taking place, you document it. But make sure it's not only you as the principal or one person going in. If you're a school where there are multiple APs, at different intervals, have them go in. I remember one teacher where I was going for 30-20A, and she decided to file harassment charges against me because I was the only administrator who was really monitoring her, although she was the teacher that I was supervising at the time. And under Education Law 30-20, I just want you to know, the department is legally required to provide the employer with notice of those deficiencies and with notice of possible further disciplinary actions. So make sure, in addition to the corporal punishment, it's very important that you address teachers who are not providing proper education in the classrooms. Let me just check the chat. I want to make sure that I'm not missing anyone who has a comment. Okay. Okay. Here's points of information. Letters for file may not be grieved. So once you meet, you provided the teacher with a letter of notice, usually within 48 hours. Letters for file may not be grieved. File letters may be removed from the teacher's personal file after 3 years if there is no reoccurring of the incident. File letters memorialize, document the process and meeting, not just the originating event. I want to go back to letters, file letters that teachers want to have removed. I went into the FAQs, and it basically says that the file can be removed, but is to be placed in an envelope with the teacher's first, last name, and file number. And that is to be secured, not in the file, but somewhere in the office. And that's very important to know. Okay, any comments on that? Okay, I want to share some of the information from the FAQs. Here we have, this is section 7. This has everything you need to know about disciplinary letters, counseling memorandums, and non-file letters. I'm showing this because I want you to realize how powerful this document is, and any question that you can possibly imagine can be answered here. It asks you, how do I memorialize discipline issues for pedagogy? It tells you.
We are not seeing what you're trying to show.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. Let me see if I can stop share. Okay. Okay, I have it now. Is that better? Thank you. Okay, let me move this down again. Here we go. This is part of our labor FAQs. This is section 7. And it has everything you actually need to know for disciplinary letters. And as before, even though you couldn't see, it has a plethora of questions. Talked about UFT, discipline letters and observations must be memorialized and placed in the file within 3 months of incident or observation. And it tells you there are different time frames for different kinds of letters. You see letters that have to do with OSI or OEO, you have within 6 months of the incident. And letters that have to do with the Special Commissioner of Investigation, it says within 12 months, but I know we really do not want to expand that length of time because we want to address things and move on. Here we have scheduling a disciplinary conference, and you guys will have this, don't forget you have this as a resource, conducting a disciplinary conference and prepare the letter. And as you saw in the previous, date and everything that you need to know. Here we have a special notation that I thought was interesting. Letters to all tenured employees include disciplinary conclusion. This incident may lead to further disciplinary actions, including charges that may lead to your termination. And it says you must include this in all cases, regardless whether you believe disciplinary charges will be brought. So it tells you what to do with tenured staff and non-tenured staff. And sometimes it's very hard to follow up and really terminate a tenured teacher. Sometimes they're given a PIP. The person comes in 1 year, they get a PIP, a 2-year, but it is a process. I just wanted to also share a part about the counseling memorandum. Here it is. There are counseling memorandums for file. It explains in your FAQ. And this information is a section that's in the FAQs between the pages are 53 to 60. It's a short window that all this information is. Any questions? Okay. It says, okay, do all the same rules apply to assistant? Okay, I'm unclear of the question. It says, do all of the same rules apply to assistant principals? I guess, and please correct me if you're talking about an assistant principal who you are practicing progressive discipline, an assistant principal who is not complying or working in tandem with the principal. Is that what is meant? That's Gerard. For assistant principals, I would really contact CSA, your CSA rep, explain what the situation is, because many times they want to resolve the problem in-house. If you have already spoken to your CSA rep, then follow through and ask them what the next steps are. For this workshop, we're really focusing in on staff members. Yes, someone said, do you mean a tip? Yes, TIP earlier. Also, someone asked, do you know if OSI investigation meetings with the accused can be held remotely? That you will have to contact the Office of Labor Relations and find out. I will put the name of a specific person. Her name is Naima Lamont, who works in this area, who can assist you with those questions. Okay. Here we have non-file letters. And don't forget, it's not for the personal file. And it says they are of limited use. Always realize that I feel that that's at least giving teachers notice, that you put them on notice, that you're not just going from saying something verbally to putting a letter in the file. So that non-file letter, the counseling memorandum, it's a midpoint for them. Okay. I just wanted to share some samples of letters that will be very helpful to you. Here we have, when we do an investigation that involves student for witnesses, this letter must be given to the person if it's an allegation of corporal punishment and you want to have witnesses. The teacher receives this letter because it wants to make sure that the teacher does not follow through, or knowing when the names are there, that they can't have any retaliation. Okay, sometimes teachers will decline and a witness is there to say that the teacher declined to sign the letter. Here you have a plethora of disciplinary conferences. This is one where they're using the correct wording to schedule an appointment to meet with a staff member for an allegation of corporal punishment. This is the verbiage that is used. And then here's one, schedule an appointment for an SCI or OSI investigation. These letters, you know, you just plug in how it relates to your situation, but this is a format letter that actually comes from the FAQs. Professional misconduct, I remember someone asked. And there was one on, here's corporal punishment now. And this is the letter that is going to go, not trying to scroll too fast. This is the full letter that goes to file, and this is how the end portion looks. The signature of the principal or assistant principal. The staff member is told that I have received a copy of this letter and understand that it will be placed in my file. And if it's a corporal punishment, you see witnesses' statements, privacy acknowledgement, and school policy manual are part of the attachments. Okay, I just want to scroll down further to show you other letters. And these letters, like I said, they will sustain themselves. And you cannot really go wrong if we lose the format of these letters. Here's one for poor judgment. So there's a plethora of letters that can be used to support what you're trying to do. And I don't want to go through all of them because it's basically several other letters that you can use because there are very different situations at different times. Here we have one that sometimes is very important, absences and lateness. Talking about, you have your secretary, document the number of times the staff member has been absent or late. You can document the patterns. Is it before the weekend? Is it after the weekend? Is it more than one time? If they're showing a pattern of twice a month during the school year, they're taking a Friday and a Monday. And this is the format that it takes. You put the month, the days late, time arrived at school, and the time lost. And you can also make sure you add what's in your faculty or staff handbook about absences and lateness. That's a big one. And again, that would be a file letter. Okay, there are different forms, and they give you several according to the situation. But these are letters to file. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing this screen. See if I don't lose you this time. And are there any questions at this point? Any question that you have that what has been said thus far? Look in the chat. Okay, someone says, are these the latest labor FAQs? Okay, yes, they are. We recently had, Eli recently had a meeting with Naima Lamont, and she's from the Office of Teacher Performance, and she shared with us, these are the latest FAQs. Is grace time included in the time loss? I'm trying to figure out, basically, if your day starts at 8:10 or 8:20, whether students come up to the classroom or in the schoolyard, the auditorium, the gymnasium, whatever the situation is, according to your levels, as far as teachers being at the assignment, there's no grace time. If they're supposed to be there 8:10, they must be there at 8:10. 8:20, whatever time it is, if the students are coming up to the classroom, teachers must be there to receive them. They have to be supervised at the start of the school day. So is grace time included in time lost? I don't think there's any grace time. It's only for docking pay. Thank you, Inez. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. One other thing I would like to share with you also is document to support. Please make sure that you're documenting that you have enough documentation when you're writing a letter to substantiate the reason for the letter to file. Also, the mere fact that we have these formatted letters already, I would always tell individuals that we do not write letters when we see an incident and we're angry. And we go down to our office and we start getting busy and we start typing a letter, even if it's a non-file letter. Please make sure that you are, it's almost like an anecdote. Please make sure that you look at the situation of what happened, address it, write it as if you're writing an anecdote. Because when we write anecdote, we're just writing what happened. And that's the way you're supposed to do it. Please sometimes take time to have someone proofread it. Sometimes we're writing things and we can look at it, but we may not see our mistakes. So if you can have someone proofread it, that will be very helpful. If your assistant principals are writing letters and it's something that they are addressing, please make sure that you look at the letter prior to whether it's a letter summoning someone or a letter that they're putting to file. Please make sure you as the principal, you make sure that you know exactly what is going out, why they're summoning them, and keep a strong handle on what's going on. Any questions? Okay. I'm going to put my email address in the chat because I want the fact that if you have any additional questions that I can assist you with. Okay, let me just change this to everyone. See, there's a few people here. And if there's anything that I have not answered, okay, I'm just going to put my email address there. So that you have, if there's any question, anything else you need to know, I will contact you. I also would like to share Naima Lamont's information because she will be a very helpful person. If you have any question, I will give you her email address so that if you need to contact her, she will, if not refer her, because she's the director of Teacher Performance Unit. She will direct you to the person who you need to be directed to. So I do want to put that her name and her email address. She is the go-to person that any question you have, even if a question sounds, you may think foolish, I would prefer to put it out there and make sure that it's addressed correctly. So I'm going to give you her name. Come on. And her email that you can share if you have any questions. Okay. And that's also information that you have. So is there any questions that, anything that you saw on any of the slides that you need additional information, because we do have a few minutes. I was trying to give you the condensed version, but at the same time, giving you the condensed version, but making sure it was informative to you. Any questions on counseling memorandums? Because I showed you the FAQs, which is very helpful. And this is the most recent FAQs. You can also go online and look into the Office of Labor Relations and you can pull it up yourself. But I thought it would be excellent that if you had this from Eli as a resource, in addition to other letters, it would be very helpful to you. And I also want you to know that this is a condensed version, but we do have the same workshop where we do it for 90 minutes. So if you do look on the Eli website, look in our single topic workshops, we're trying to do a lot of them via Zoom because we know how busy your days are. It's great that we're doing this summer so that you can take 1 hour out of your extremely busy day, or at this point is near the end of your day, just to get this information. Okay, I see someone had a comment in the chat about a 5-minute grace time. I see someone put, Irene. They can't be deducted the first 5 minutes of lateness. They had 5 minutes grant time for paid deduction. Okay. I would, that's in there, Irene, but I would definitely ask again for teachers, giving them grace period. Maybe on different levels it's different, but I know as a principal of a pre-K through 6 school, it was required that teachers be at their assignment because it's hard if the class is there and you're trying to move the students upstairs if someone is taking their time getting there. So I'm not going to be totally transparent. I don't-
Joyce, no, you're correct. You're correct. What I was saying was, you can still discipline them. They have to be at their location at the start time. But
Yes.
when they raise the idea of grace time, there is a rule that the first 5 minutes of their lateness can't be deducted from
As far as payroll, right?
So payroll, they won't be deducted those 5
Correct.
minutes off of their check, but that has nothing to do with discipline. You can still discipline them if they're not there for their kids on time.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so I just misunderstood. Thank you. Now, someone asked, does that only apply to DC 37? As far as the start day, we're talking about our DC 37 school aides, and I think the FAQs, that's why I say staff. I don't limit it to teachers. Okay, so doesn't that only apply to DC 37? Are you speaking about the grace time, Joseph? I'm not sure. Okay. Thank you. Now, if you don't mind me sharing the screen one last time, because we still have a few, there's something I really would like to share with you on the labor FAQs that I can go back to. Just on one of the sample letters. So I'm just going to share it quickly. And thank you. And I just want to look at a particular. Is everyone seeing this again? Can everyone see this? Did I share correctly this time?
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Okay, this is your counseling memorandum. And I just wanted you to see what it looked like, the language that is used. And even though, okay, this one is a counseling letter that can go to file. It's not for disciplinary purposes, right here. Cannot be used in any action against an employee except to prove notice of the employee. So this one says, and this is from the Office of Labor Relations, that this kind of counseling memo will go into the file, but it's really being used as giving the staff member notice. So does everyone understand that? It's a counseling memorandum, but it cannot be used for disciplinary purposes, but just to make sure that the staff member has been given. Okay. And the other one, for those people who have technical assistant conference form, this is it. And your sample grievance decision. So these are documents that will support anything you need to know. And I also want you to know that at the last workshop, someone asked about teachers who are not performing appropriately. You still follow the same progressive discipline and you address that. Any questions? Okay. I'm going to stop sharing this screen and go back into the other screen so we can, thank you. I think we all got good at Zoom after COVID. And just recapping, if we covered our goal to empower everyone here to support and supervise staff to write letters of documentation that will be legally sustained. I hope within this short period of time that was accomplished, to identify the various types of letters, which we covered, compare and contrast file versus non-file letters, and basically to analyze. During a 90-minute workshop, Eli does provide a scenario where you have to compose a documentation and critique, but in this short version of it, we're not able to do that. Really just want to give you the facts what you need to move forward and the resources. And I hope that was helpful. And the last one, I hope that you can identify one element that you can take away from this workshop and use in the future, and other insights about letter writing that you felt were insightful. And I hope this was very helpful to everyone here today. Please, at this point, please use the tiny URL to complete the evaluation, or you can scan the QR code. And it's very important that every single participant today filled in their name. I was assisted by Jaleesi from Eli, and she put a link in the chat to make sure so that you can get your CTLE credits. And that's very important. I hope the workshop was extremely informative. If anyone else has a question, please place it in the chat so that I can answer that for you at this time. Okay. Thank you so much. I hope it was informative. I feel, I'm probably older than most of you, but I say this was like the Reader Digest condensed version of letter writing. I hope it was informative and I hope you enjoyed it. And please fill out the evaluation for the workshop. Don't forget, those of you who are still there, Eli has, we're continuing our Summer Institute at Fordham University near Lincoln Center. So please feel free to participate in any one of the workshops. These workshops are 3 hours though. Thank you so much for attending this afternoon and enjoy your summer. And I'm still here, so if anyone has a question in the chat, I will answer it.